Then from there, once you have a little bit more of a base of like, okay, where is the tide shifting within the industry? Then where are my own interests and my own faults? That can then gear you more towards like, okay, how can I now mold this as far as where my professional career is trying to go?
Hello and welcome to the Physical Preparation Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Robertson, and I'll be joined on the line later today by the young Padawan himself, Mike Camporini. Now, before we jump into this week's episode, I want to give you a quick recap of the week that was, what's going on, and what's new in my neck of the woods, because, man, there is a ton going on right now. When people use the term busy, like if you ask somebody what's going on, they're just like, oh, busy. Like, that kind of annoys me. And I feel like there should be some sort of qualifier. So as I go through this list, I'm going to hopefully qualify what I mean when I say I'm busy right now. So last weekend, just all of the things going on. Saturday, we had 3 games. Cade had his baseball game. Kendall had her end of the year soccer tournament. So we had a game at 9:30. Kendall had a game at 12:45. My niece graduated from IU, so we went to her graduation party for like 2 hours and then came back and had a second soccer game because we played both games of the tournament on Saturday. So we played the last one at 5:45. So needless to say, Saturday was just all over the place. By the time I got up on Sunday, I was already just tired just from Saturday. And, the glorious life of Mike Robertson that day included yard work, going to Costco, and then I had talked to our soccer girls all year. I said at the end of the year, we're going to go out for ice cream. For some reason, they didn't believe me. They must not think I'm a man of my word, but we made sure we went to Handles, got some amazing ice cream. One girl swore, I promised her I would get her a triple scoop. She tried to order a triple scoop, and the girl was like, oh, well, listen, like 1 scoop for us is like 2.5. So that would be like 7 scoops of ice cream, at which point I immediately said no. And Nona was like, yeah. I was like, no, you're not having 7 scoops of ice cream. So needless to say, it was an amazing time. I love doing that at the end of the year. It always sucks. Like, let's be honest. We thought we played well enough. We won our first game, lost our second. We thought we were going to push through and make it into the championship of our bracket, and it just didn't work out. So it's always kind of bittersweet when a season ends, especially this year because we're in a 3rd, 4th grade league. We probably only had, out of our 11 girls, only 4 were in 4th grade. So we had a lot of young girls that won't come up with us next year because 3rd and 4th stay together and then 5th, 6th go together. So all of those girls are going to be just crushing it in their league next year. And we move up to 5th, 6th grade, bigger fields, bigger teams. So a lot going on there, but excited. Kendall also, I was pretty proud of this, got nominated to play in our All-Star game on Monday night. So very excited for her. The club asks for the coaches to recommend players, and I recommended 2. You could recommend up to 3, but I said these 2 stand out on our team. Didn't include Kendall, and not because I don't think she's good, but there are just 2 girls on our team that are really at another level than the rest of the gals. So somebody else thought enough of her to put her in the game, and for some reason they asked me to coach. So pretty excited about that. It felt really exciting for her. When she played the game, she looked like she fit right in. She definitely wasn't getting blown by. She had some really good moments. So really excited for her, and hopefully that continues to generate her passion and her interest for sports. Again, I don't have any inklings or desires for my kids to grow up and play in college or play in the professional ranks, but I would love it if they would play sports for a while and learn the lessons that a lot of us learned along the way. That's why we turned out to be coaches, because sports were a big part of our life. We learned a lot from it. And I think a lot of us in turn fell in love with the weight room, maybe even more so than we did our sports themselves. So that was just last weekend. Like I said, a ton going on. And then this week, the grind is real, and I'm sure Gary Schofield would hate hearing that. But yeah, the grind is real right now because I've got basically all of my athletes back. Some are kind of in and out this week, but this week, next week, it's going to be full tilt for probably the next 2 to 3 months. So it's not just the athletes coming back, but it's getting an idea as to where their bodies are at, what their goals are for the off season, because some of them we're in a nice rhythm and routine with, but they have kind of different goals for this offseason. Some want to gain weight. Some want to lose a little bit of weight or lose a little bit of body fat. So, we're going to have to tweak and modify their program. Their bodies are different, like the physical structure maybe doesn't always change, but there's little things that they pick up over the year, or maybe they lose some range of motion over the year. So it just takes time to get all these programs laid out. And I think you probably know at this point in time, I'm not just handing out the workout of the day. I sit down and I flesh out kind of my goals for each of the mesocycles. Even though I only write one at a time, I've kind of got a big overarching view of how I want their off season to look and when they're going to report. So it just takes a lot of time. These first couple weeks of getting them onboarded, getting them back in the routine, laying out the big structure, and then writing the individual programs. There's just a lot going on there. And then on top of my athletes, I've got a couple mentorship calls this week. I got an IFAST U Q&A. I got my distance clients in on Friday. So all of the things going on, but let's be real here. If I didn't love it, I wouldn't do it. I love what I do. I was thinking about it the other day, 21 years in, I'm still super passionate about coaching. Like, it's the best part of my day. The summer is the best part of my year every year. And it's not because of the heat and humidity here in Indiana. It's because coaching the most, and I've got great people that I'm working with, and they're all focused and they're ready to get to work and get better. So really fun time for me. I hope you can say the same. I am going to stop rambling now because we have an amazing guest this week. My guy, Mike Camporini. He's interned at IFAST. He's been a PT student with Bill. Incredibly sharp guy. So we're going to take a quick break and we're going to jump into this awesome episode with my guy, Mike. It seems like almost every day I talk to a young trainer or coach who is frustrated. Maybe they're frustrated with the results they're getting. Maybe they're frustrated because they don't have trusted resources to learn from. And maybe they're frustrated because they simply don't have enough clients and wonder how long they'll be able to stay in the industry. So if this sounds anything like you, I've got something that I know will help. My Complete Coach certification was created for trainers and coaches just like you, who are serious about the results they get and know that becoming a better coach can directly translate to a bigger bottom line. This certification is going to take the last 20 years of my life's work and put it all into one massive course. In it, you'll learn how to use the R7 system to create seamless, integrated, and efficient programs for clients and athletes of all shapes and sizes. How to create the culture, environment, and relationships with everyone you train so you can get the absolute best results. The exact progressions, regressions, and coaching cues I use in the gym, from squatting and deadlifting to pressing and pulling and everything in between. And last but not least, I've added an entire section on my assessment process and how to use that to write programs faster and more effectively than ever before. Of course, there's a ton more that I cover, but that should give you a pretty good idea of what the certification is all about. Now, here's the thing. Spots for the certification will open twice per year for a limited time only. If you're interested in learning more, my next certification will launch in March 2021, and if you join my free insiders list, you'll be able to save $200 when it opens. To get on the insiders list, just head over to CompleteCoachCertification.com. Again, CompleteCoachCertification.com, and then stay tuned for our launch emails coming very soon. Thanks so much for your support, and I hope you'll pick up a copy of the Complete Coach Certification when it launches. Mike Camporini is a PT and strength coach who lives and works out of Phoenix, Arizona. He holds a DPT from Simmons University, a bachelor's in exercise science from Springfield College, and has spent way too much time at IFAST. He's worked in both the collegiate setting and private sector as a strength coach, and is currently working as a PT with predominantly post-op patients and some online clients. He also claims to be the strongest, smartest, and most handsome man in America, but I'll let you guys judge that for yourselves. In this show, Mike and I look at the journey necessary to become a physical therapist. We start with basics, like what to look for in a school and why having some say in your clinicals is so important. From there, we talk about the role and value of the schooling process and how you can and should continue to educate yourself outside of the school environment. And last but not least, we talk about the transition from school to the real world and how you can get your career started off on the right track. This was a really great conversation, and if you know anyone who is either in PT school or considering attending, please pass it along to them as well. But enough for me, let's do this. Mike, dude, thanks so much for coming on the show here today. Excited to have you on. Could you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
MR, thanks for having me on. This is awesome to be a part of this. But a little bit about me. So got my bachelor's degree at Springfield College in exercise science. I've worked in a few different settings as a strength coach, both in like collegiate team settings as well as in like the private sector. Then after doing that for a little while, I went back to PT school to get my DPT and get into the rehab realm. And right now I'm just doing a lot of my own stuff online, as well as working in a physician-run clinic where I do a lot of post-op PT. So it's a great experience for myself. So
that's awesome, man. That's awesome. So talk to me, because I don't know, even though you've interned essentially for us twice, like what got you started in all this? Like what got you excited about the world of physical preparation?
So it actually started pretty early for me when I was in elementary school.
Oh, wow.
They came in. Yeah. So they came to elementary school as like an intro for like middle school. And they showed like all these different clubs that you could go into. Back in the day, I was like this pudgy kid, but I was still an athlete. So I had interest in like moving around and everything. So they talked about like the track team. And I was like, I'm not into running, not trying to do that. They talked about like the band. I'm like, okay, not into that either. But then they talked about the weightlifting club. And I was like, oh, okay, like that's something I could get behind. But in actuality, when I got there, what it turned out to be was just like one of my science teachers just like started the club so you get paid to lift in the gym after school.
Oh, nice.
And so it was pretty much just like me and him in the weight room, and he'd be like in the corner doing curls, looking at himself in the mirror, like blasting heavy metal. And I'd be like struggling under like 40 pounds on the machine bench press.
Yeah.
But that's like kind of how it started for me. And then eventually it evolved into like, okay, as I went to middle school and high school, this actually became like pertinent for like football and baseball and into sports and everything. The gist of how it started. And then with PT, it was more like I got injured playing football, and it's the usual song and dance of like get injured, go into PT, already had an interest in this. And it's like, oh, okay, like this is a decent career that I could see myself doing. And that's kind of how that evolved.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So talk to me, like give me the career arc, if you will. And we're going to focus a lot on your journey as a PT student. I think that's one of the main themes of this show overall, but like talk to me about your different stops along the way. So PT school, you get into rotations, like talk me through all that.
Sure. So, well, I kind of always knew that I wanted to go into PT. So even when I was doing like all my internships for my exercise science course, I tried to gear it towards like, okay, yeah, I definitely want to learn some principles on like training and understanding all that. But I also want to have like this lens or this niche as far as getting more into like the return to play or treating injured individuals or treating individuals with pain. So I did a bunch of internships with people that kind of specialized in that. As far as I started with when Pat Davidson went over to New York, interned with him, and that's also when he was like teamed up with all the resilient guys.
Oh yeah,
so that was like a great summer for me as far as like that was really like my first exposure to like, hey, this is how you bring someone through a training session.
Yep.
This is how you conduct the training session, and this is what we're looking for. So that kind of like introduced me almost into like the culture as far as like my values and things I wanted to look into and things that I was pursuing. And so that was a great like first exposure to that. And that's how they led me to you guys initially at IFAST. And you guys have kind of been the bread and butter as far as enabling people to not only train well and train for performance, but also taking all those other considerations as far as like movement deficits or issues with past injuries or pain or things like that, kind of taking it to the next level and set the standard. So that was a great first stop for me. And that just kind of, well, not only did it affirm like me going into PT school, but you guys definitely put a spotlight on all my other deficits just as like not only a coach, but just as an individual in general, and trying to, again, set the standard for like who you're trying to be as a professional. So
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And I think one of the things that I always tried to emphasize, because at IFAST, we've had all these different waves, right? We would get at the start, we got a lot of just like coaches, right? Like people that wanted to be strength coaches in the purest sense. And then we definitely went through this phase where we got a lot of PT-ish students, like people that wanted to hang out with Bill and learn that side. And I remember, I don't think I was angry. because I'm not a very angry person, but I definitely had moments, and I probably had this discussion with you at one point where it's like, look, like I love that, and I love the fact that you want to continue your education and go to PT school after that.
Right.
But this next 12, 14, 16 weeks, whatever it is all about coaching. So when you leave here, you've got to be a great coach. So I just respect the fact that you not only dealt with us for whatever that was, 14 weeks, but you came back and did a whole nother rotation with Bill later on.
Well, and so that was, I mean, I alluded to like appreciating like who I was as an individual and like understanding where my process was back then.
Yeah.
And then, you know, getting that 2-week rude awakening, that little spank in the butt of like, hey, like this is really why you're here. It's like become a better coach, become a better person, and have an appreciation for that before you really start to dwell into more of like the nuances, the more interesting things. And that's really where, like, you know, we talk about things like setting up a base. Like setting up a base as a coach is extremely important.
Yep.
Not only as like a PT, because you're using all the same principles and everything that I learned in that initial internship that I'm using as a PT right now. And if anything, I might use even more of that stuff as opposed to a lot of the more nuanced biomechanics and mechanisms and things like that. I genuinely believe that Rufus sets like the standard as far as what you should. I'm serious.
Yeah.
So he sets the standard as far as like what you should seek to achieve initially out of like that first. So he's like self-admittedly not like the smartest guy or the most creative guy. And I know it sounds mean of me to say that, but he'll admit it himself. So.
Right.
But, and with all of those, like the lack thereof of like some of those more God-given traits, like he's still able to set the bar of mastery as a coach exceptionally high. And all you have to do is just hang out with him for one of those Saturday lifting sessions and see, it's like, oh crap, like he's spending like 4 hours like dwelling into like how to coach this RDL, which like is useful and not useful, but the fact that he's able to have the capacity to do that demonstrates the amount of mastery he was able to garner just with like curiosity, humility, interest, things like that enabled him to reach that. And that's almost like, if anything, he should be like the poster child for like that first internship I went through, as far as like, hey, this is why you're here.
Right.
Not all that other fancy stuff. It's like, look at what you could really become if you just focused on like the bread and butter of what it is to be a coach, you know?
Yeah.
So
I love that. Miss that guy, man. Rona kind of kept him more on the south side. We got to get him back up north for a while, man. I miss him.
I know now he's branched out doing his own thing with the Rufus movies, with Rufus podcasts and everything.
He's big time. I don't even know if he wants to hang out with us anymore.
He's Hollywood now, I guess. So.
Yeah. Okay. So again, I think the big focus for this show, I want to just focus on your journey, like going to PT school, rotations, all that good stuff. So let's start very basic. Walk me through the process of choosing a PT school, and kind of a two-parter here. Most of them are.
Sure.
What was your criteria? And then two, what were the things that were important for you when choosing a school? So
I guess they'll kind of blend together as far as what things were important to me. And I think I had an advantage just as far as like how self-aware I was as far as where I wanted my career to go. And PT school always tries to sway you and make sure that you're taking like that general approach and everything, which is important. But I think it's a little more important for individuals that really have less of an idea of where it is their interests are and their trajectory wants to go.
Gotcha.
So my criteria kind of revolved around, well, I'd still have a vast interest in athletics and sports or that outpatient route and understanding all of that. So let me see if I can find a school that at least caters to that path that I'm trying to create for myself. And the criteria for that wasn't too advanced, just because, well, I knew where I wanted to go. So I want to kind of pick my own clinical rotation. Do you guys have at least the capacity for me to do that, so that I have a little bit more control as far as like where this trajectory goes? And then secondly, I wanted to make sure that they had a human anatomy lab, like a gross anatomy lab. And I thought that having that experience to look back on was extremely important, not only in understanding anatomy, but I think the biggest thing that I garnered from that was you can learn anatomy from the textbook and you can look at that picture, but then you have a room of 20 different individual people in front of you, and then having an appreciation for like, okay, this is what it looks like in a textbook, but this is what it looks like for this person.
Right.
And this is what their anatomy looks like for this person and for this person, and this person. And even understanding how their habits as far as like drinking, smoking, dietary can even influence some of those things just as like a general health perspective, but even like the toll it has on their body as a whole in general. Like that was extremely important for me. And then lastly, like how cheap can we go? Like I don't think it's any secret for anyone who's looking to get into PT school. It's like you look at that price tag, it's like you start sweating a little bit.
Right.
So finding the combination of those three, or at least people that are willing to help with like your finances and give you some financial aid and things like that, those are by far, in my opinion, some of the most important things.
So, okay, how many schools did you look at?
I looked at, I applied to 12 different schools. And it was kind of all over the country as far as locations.
Yeah.
Most of them were like in the Northeast because that's where I'm from and everything.
Right.
And then, so it's tricky because like you got to cast a wide net and then you kind of cross your fingers and see like, okay, maybe I might hear back from 3 of them.
Right.
And maybe I'll actually get accepted to 1 or 2. And then those are my options. And if they match the criteria, then like, thank God I'm able to go to some place that I actually want to go to,
Right. So, okay. So one more follow-up. So you applied to 12 of those, like how many did you have some say in what your clinical rotation would have looked like? Do you know?
Of the 12, I would say 10 of them. And I that was one of the things where I literally called the admissions office, and there's an individual and they're the director of clinical education.
Okay.
Get a hold of them and get an email from them. Get it in writing.
Yes.
Saying that, hey, like, yes, you're enabled as far as like the freedom of what you're allowed to do. Because even plenty of times, like they'll say so-and-so just to get you to apply and get their numbers up and things like that. I'm not trying to sell them as like, this capitalistic pig that's just trying to get all the students and get all the money, right? But the tune can often change as far as like what the trajectory that you're trying to take is.
That's really interesting. And that's a grown-up piece of advice right there. Because when you're growing up, a lot of times it's like, oh, handshake deal, like with your buddy. But yeah, you get in the real world. If it's something big like that, you better get it in writing. That's smart.
Well, and even the school I went to, it was like, okay, yeah, they said that and they told me that. But then even like day one, as soon as they start talking about clinicals, it's like get in their office and make sure that it's like, hey, this is what I want. This is why I want it. As long as you demonstrate like, hey, I have an idea of where I want to go in life. And like, I understand that you guys are hypothetically know more and know the best for me as a student and have your idea for your curriculum, but this is still my life. Like I want to go where I want to go.
Yeah.
And if we're able to make that happen, like let's start the ball rolling now to make sure that we're not trying to do this last minute and have to jump all these other different hurdles. It's like, let's start the process right now and at least understand my intentions,
Yeah. No, I love that, man. Okay. So talk to me about Con Ed during school, because you obviously continue to educate yourself over and above the standard PT curriculum. So I want to know, why did you do that? And maybe along those same lines, how did you go about doing it? Because you've got obviously a ton of things that are weighing on your schedule. So how did you go about getting it done?
So I think the biggest thing for me, and even like the whole Con Ed thing kind of started even earlier than PT school, just because a lot of the people that I respected and were trying to mimic when I was younger were doing those exact same things. And so as a little tadpole in the industry, I was like, well, I genuinely don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Right.
So I'm at least going to try and tag along with these people and see like, okay, like this is what they're trying to do. Let me try and emulate that. And that even started when I met my first physical therapist for my own shoulder. And he was like a big SFMA guy back in like, this was 2012. So I went to my first course that he was putting on when I was like 19. It's okay. I had a little bit of knowledge on like anatomy, so I could like stumble through some of the conversations that they were having, but at least it's exposing me to like a little bit of like the language and the lenses that some people within the industry are utilizing, right?
Yep.
I can adopt at least a little bit of an understanding. And so I did that through the years and even leading up into PT school, as far as like, okay, what are some of the people that I emulate? What are some of the things that they're trying to learn? And whether that's right of me or like the right path that I was supposed to take or not is irrelevant. It was at least exposing me to a lens that at least led me to understanding like where some of the thought processes were within the industry, other than what was being taught in PT school or within my undergrad or whatever. Then from there, once you have a little bit more of a base of like, okay, where is the tide shifting within the industry? Then where are my own interests and my own faults? That can then gear you more towards like, okay, how can I now mold this as far as where my professional career is trying to go, at least. So it started out as like nothing, and then kind of like mimicked people to like just get your own like weird ball of clay. And then as that starts to form, you kind of see its own shape as far as like, oh, okay, this is actually where my misunderstandings are. This is where I'm lacking, or this is where my interests are. And then that's kind of how it kind of spiraled into where it is, to this day. And I'm still trying to figure that out. It's a process. So.
Oh, I think we are, number one, but I think that's incredibly self-aware of you. I just remember when I was finishing up grad school, I ranked myself on a scale of 1 to 10 on all these various topics, right? Like strength. I was a power lifter, so I put myself as like a 9 at 24 years old, I thought I knew it all. But I just remember I put rehab and I was like a 2. And then the next 3 years of my life, I worked in a rehab clinic. So I got a lot better at that. But
there you go.
But I think that's just a great life lesson, is like constantly kind of evaluating where you're at, strengths, weaknesses. And the goal isn't to make your weaknesses strengths, because that never really happens, but at least making it to a point where they're not what I would describe as a rate limiter anymore. They're not holding back your growth or development anymore.
For sure. It's when you first start out where it's like, all right, where are my downfalls? It's like, well, I don't know anything. That's a big downfall.
Right.
So let me at least go and talk to people that know something. So that's how you do internships and mentorships. And then they can at least steer you towards like, okay, this is what you should be interested in. That's exactly what you guys did. That's what all my other internships did. And then, it's like, again, going back to like the whole thing with Rufus, it's like understand the basics at least. I think a lot of people kind of poo-poo the whole like CS exam and the textbook that comes with it, but it's like, hey, that's literally called the fundamentals of strength and conditioning.
Yeah.
There's some good fundamental pieces in there that anyone who's a 19, a 20-year-old, a 21-year-old coach that doesn't know anything about physiology or adaptations or periodization, it's like, it's meant to be, again, a base for everyone within the industry can grab onto. Then as you evolve, you can understand what's useful, what's not useful, what's the context which I'm placed in, and how is that appropriate as far as what I was learning. And again, it's like you go back to some of those more basic things. It's like, you took biology class. It's like now after going and working for a little bit and understanding where things are supposed to be, it's like now all that stuff has context. It's like you kind of wish that you had the context before you went into the classroom, so you had like a little bit more appreciation for what you were learning. But at the end of the day, it's like at least take it with faith that like, hey, they want you to learn this stuff for a reason. And whether it's relevant a year from now, whether it's relevant 5 years from now, it's still probably going to be relevant. So you might as well continue to put your efforts and learn some of that stuff. So
for sure. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is arguably, like you said, it was the most important thing to you, and that was your clinical rotations. Mm-hmm. So I would love to hear how you went about choosing those. And you kind of already said, how much say you had, but like, even though you said, or they told you that you were going to have some say, like how much did you end up playing a role in choosing your own sites?
So there, like, I guess like in any negotiation, there's always a little give and take, right?
Right.
And that's how I kind of approached it, as far as like, they have their agenda, I have mine. Let's see if we can meet in the middle and see if we can make this work and everyone's happy, right?
Okay.
So there's different ways in which certain PT programs are structured. Sometimes 4 clinicals, and they'll be 8 weeks long. Some will be 3, and they're like 12 weeks long. Some will kind of sprinkle other shadowing opportunities in there. But mine, anyway, was 3 clinical rotations, and each one of them is 12 weeks. 2 of them can be outpatient. So that's like your typical outpatient orthopedics, or as defined, the patients don't live or sleep within the facility. And then you got to do inpatient, which is still valuable, especially whatever role you're trying to get into. It's necessary to at least have that appreciation for some of the more medical sided things, right? Mm-hmm. So the way most schools will work, and this is for everyone, this is for like the person who comes into PT school and has no clue what they're trying to do with PT, but they still want to be a PT, right? So they'll give you essentially a menu of however many partnerships that they have with either neighboring facilities or facilities across the country that they've created connections with. And then it's essentially your job to rank those as far as where you'd like to go the most. So you do some research, you see, okay, is this a decent clinical site? Am I going to learn what I want to learn here, et cetera? And then you do that for inpatient, and you do that for your outpatient rotations, right? And so the main things that, again, it needs a little self-reflection, self-awareness as far as what you're trying to get, right? So the first one I had to do was a outpatient rotation. And this wasn't the IFAST one. I had already tried to like set that one up and everything. And Bill doesn't take first year students anyway, because like a typical first year PT student would probably like cry and be put in like a hole of depression after like the first 2 weeks of the rotation with him. But, so it's smart of him to not do that.
Right.
So the first place I went to was, they actually specialize more in like the chronic pain side of things. So I saw a lot of people with fibromyalgia. I saw a lot of individuals who have had pain for like 10 plus years and things like that. And that I think was useful for me, just as far as like creating an extreme representation of where people can really go. It's like how far down that hole can people get to when it comes to bodily pain, and what are some of the more psychological factors that people tend to deal with. And that was hugely beneficial for me, just as far as like creating empathy, not only for them, but now for any patient that I'm about to work with.
All right.
And understanding the kind of soft skills that you need as far as treating these individuals and creating a bedside manner and having a certain disposition when you talk with them. And that was something that I learned as a coach at IFAST, as far as like, hey, it's like, okay, you understand the anatomy. It's like, can you relay that to this person? Can you make them understand why it's relevant? Can you at least meet them at their level and see if you can understand where they're at and then guide them to where they're trying to go? That's true for when you're training people. That's true for when you're working with someone who's got 15 years of low back pain. Right?
Yep.
The second place I went to was then IFAST. And so obviously Bill's been a huge mentor to a ton of people. He was a mentor to me previously. And I truly knew that, okay, my intent when I wanted to go pick my clinical, it was like, hey, day one, I went into their office and I was like, hi, there's a guy in Indiana. I know him, I've met him. I think he's really great. I want to go learn from him again. Can we try and get this set up? And that was already well in the way as far as trying to create that. And then the last one was my inpatient rotation, where so when you're working inpatient, especially compared to like where I was coming from the upper echelon of like working with more performance level individuals and pro athletes and things like that. And then you get to, again, like it's another extreme representation of humans as far as like what their physical capacity is, what their health is, and how far down individuals really go. And then it's like, now you're really tested as far as like, oh, okay, you thought you knew progressions and regressions. Well, guess what? Like you really don't.
Right.
So if you're dealing with someone who's 400 pounds, has been bedridden for the last like 3 years and has an amputated lower limb, it's like, guess what? You still got to do exercise with them. What do you got? It's like how many tools in your tool bag, and how flexible can you really be as far as generating not only one hour or half hour session with them, but an entire program as far as where do they need to get to. And then just having that kind of representation now using that in a clinic where I'm at, where it's, somewhere in the middle ground of like, yeah, I get some people who are like maybe like 40% down the rabbit hole as far as towards the inpatient side. And then you get some people who are like 40% up towards where some of those pro athletes were. Now it's almost creates it easy for you as far as being able to get those progressions and regressions and understanding where they're at and understanding where you're trying to get them, at least.
That's awesome. And it's just really interesting that they set it up like that, because like I remember way back in the day when I was actually in school, like we did a 16-hour like practicum where you have to like go and just get some sort of credit,
Sure.
right? And show up
Sure.
for a little while. And then you do your big internship. And so they kind of expect you to have it figured out. So I really like how you get kind of this well-rounded approach. And like you said, you're probably never thinking, I want to do chronic pain, or I never want to do inpatient. But at the same time, like you alluded to, you picked up skills that,
Absolutely.
not just skills, but it gave you experience and it gave you empathy and things that'll carry over to you as a practitioner the rest of your life. So, I mean, it probably sucked if you're not into that for 12 weeks, but looking back, you can reflect on it and be like, okay, that wasn't my favorite thing to do, but it was valuable.
Right. It puts things into perspective, like the more experience you have, as well as like the vastness of the experience that you have, rather than just becoming specified, but seeing like the whole spectrum of things. It puts it into perspective when, I've got a 24-year-old with an ACL injury. It's like, yeah, it still sucks. Like, it's not a great injury to have, and it's a bad place to be in life. But then you have another appreciation for like, hey, like it's totally could be worse. And it can totally get way better just based on who you are as a person.
Yes.
Just being able to relay that to your patient gives them an astounding amount of confidence, not only in you as a practitioner, but in themselves, and being able to navigate the whole rehab process on their own and with you, things like that. So
I love it, man. Okay. So talk to me about the transition from school to the real world, because it's tough for everyone. I'm sure it was for you as well. So what did the job search process look like for you? You've got the little piece of paper, right? You're a graduate. What did that look like?
Well, and it was especially interesting for my cohort because we were kind of getting thrown into the job market right in the height of coronavirus.
Right.
So that was especially interesting as far as like seeing what some of like the jobs were available and like how receptive people were to, one, not only bringing in a new body to a medical facility, which is risky in general, especially during a global pandemic, but two, bringing in a new grad that they have the interpretation to train this guy. There's going to be some learning curves and things like that. And we're already dealing with like half these other problems with what's going on socially. It's like, well, we got to maybe not really look into hiring new grads and things like that. But typically when you come out of school, you can land a job pretty readily within like the first few weeks. For a lot of people coming out of school with COVID, it took, I was looking for jobs back in May. I didn't get hired until like November, until until where I was now. I tried to work odd jobs, and that's when I started doing the online thing, not out of like interest of like, oh, I'm going to build my Instagram and try and have a social presence, which like I never cared about anyway. I didn't want to do that. But at necessity, it's like, well, crap, I got to pay rent. There's some people, out on the other side of the country that are willing to talk to me online. So let's start doing that. Okay, scrounge that up, generate a little revenue. I can live off that. Found another job where I was actually evaluating car accident patients for it wasn't necessarily like a group of lawyers, but it was kind of a group of lawyers to where they can take my evaluation as a medical professional and bring it to car insurance companies and say, hey, like this person needs like medical attention, and that's like part of the coverage that you need to provide. So it's like I had no idea that even existed. I had no idea that's where I was going to end up. But then I started doing like house calls, and I'd bring my table, I'd go to their house, I'd do an evaluation and make sure that there weren't any broken bones or neurologic issues or anything like that. And again, it's like that's something that PT school is supposed to prepare you for. I had all the intentions in the world of becoming specialized and ending up more of where I'm at right now. But in order to just live on my own and pay rent, it's like, hey, you got to do this really weird, odd job that you didn't even know existed. But thanks to some of those fundamental skills, I'm able to do that effectively and make sure, someone's not dying in their house right now,
Right.
So that was extremely interesting, just coming out of school and everything like that. But then it's just a matter of like, okay, reflecting on some of your past experiences, because now what the people really want to understand, it's like, okay, you're a new grad, but it's like not all new grads are made equal, and they have an understanding. So what did you learn? What did you garner? What kind of skills did you create? How much did you apply yourself? Things like that. That's what they want to see. And that's what they want to see as far as like, what kind of substance or quality of a new graduate are they getting right out of school? So if you can effectively convey that in your little elevator pitch of an interview, even though it's damn near impossible, I always think it's like a movie trailer for an entire book. It's like you're trying to convey like a lot of the things in your life into like a 1 hour segment. It's
Right.
like that's impossible. You know
Right.
what I mean? But do the best you can, and at least have a little self-reflection of like, kind of like this. It's like, what was your path? What was your trajectory? What was some of the things that really stood out to you and why? And that gives them a little bit of glimpse as far as like your values and who you are as a person. And just make sure that you convey that you're genuine about it, not that you're full of it when they're talking to them. Like that's huge too. So
Right. So, okay. So bringing this full circle, talk to me about what an average day is like now, because like you said, you've got the online
Sure.
thing going a little bit, you've got clinical work. So like, how does that work on the day-to-day for you?
So the schedule worked out pretty well as far as like all the clinical stuff. And that's the bulk of my time. It's like I work 40 hours, I'm salaried, like I'm seeing 16 to 18 patients a day in there. And it's good. It's all good experience and everything. But I'm there Monday, Wednesday, Friday, pretty much from like 7 to 7.
Ooh.
And then I'll work a half day on Tuesday and Thursday. And honestly, it's like, I've been a strength coach for 4 years prior to this, and I was a student working full time. So it's like those hours I don't want to do in my entire life, but I can
Right.
at least put up with them right now to make sure that I'm getting to where I want to go and building all the experience that I need as a first-time PT right now. And then thankfully now with all of the changes to my schedule, I have times like this where Tuesday and Thursday morning, I'm able to talk to people, whether it's online clients or other individuals that I'm starting to build connections with through like the industry and things. So that enables me to have a little bit of free time as far as building more of where I'm trying to get my career to eventually go, or at least more of what I think I want it to go as far as the direction. So
Yeah. All right. Big question time. If you could alter the space-time continuum and give young Mike Camporini one piece of advice, what would it be?
Sure. I don't. Here's what's weird, and here's what's weird about always like reflecting back on some of this stuff, where it's like, if I told myself one of these things, it would completely alter my trajectory probably, as far as like, I could go back and say like, hey, your shoulder's going to get hurt. Like, don't go into that football game, right?
Right.
That would bring me to the PT that exposed me to physical therapy. And then that wouldn't have brought me to Springfield, which exposed me to this whole group of network and eventually brought me to where I am today. And I love where I'm at today. I don't want anything of that to change. What I would try and do is almost kind of what I was alluding to before, is like almost like take the hindsight that I have now and grant it to my younger self, as far as like, hey, like, all those prereqs that you're doing right now, like those had meaning. It's like, don't just think that because it's not readily apparent to you in your face at that moment, that it's not worth your time. And that's totally how I was as a younger guy. I got A's and B's in all the classes that I really liked and was interested in. And if I couldn't see the point in the other stuff, I got C's and D's. And that's what, screwed me in the end, as far as, my understanding of stuff now. And then even like some of my stuff for grad school and college, right?
Yep.
Just having that appreciation, wisdom almost of where you're at, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to understand. And knowing that, well, if you applied that, 5 years ago, you probably would have had a much better time of it. And that's even what I'm trying to apply right now. It's like, okay, even though it's impossible, it's like looking forward 5 years into the future. What would I wish that I knew 5 years from now, and see if I can get that today.
Yep.
Try and find a loophole within the game or something like that.
Yeah. No, I love it, man. I think that's great advice. And again, pretty pretty heady of you, because I think we all have those moments where we're like, damn, I wish I would have done that different, or I wish I would have paid more attention in this class, But again,
and you're always going to have that. Like, I think like there's always going to be that regrets, which is like, you're never going to be perfect. You're never going to nail it the first time. Like, you're not God, you're not Superman. Like, that's like never going to happen. So it's important to at least fail and then have those hindsights, and that's how you gain like that wisdom as far as like, okay, now this is really where I want things to go. So
absolutely. All right, man. Last but not least, we got our lightning round. So for you, I have 5 fairly short questions. Your answer can be as long or short as you like. Cool?
Okay.
All right.
I'll try and make it lightning quick for you.
I love it. Number 1, what's your career highlight so far as a clinician? Even though it's a short career, there's got to be something that stands out, right?
So there's one thing that kind of happened recently. I was working on a project in PT school. It was like kind of our capstone research project. And then kind of haphazardly, my professor was like, hey, let's try and submit this to be published. And so like, lo and behold, like the publisher was actually like, hey, it's pretty good. Like, we're actually going to go ahead with this. I'm like, oh, cool. Okay. So just had to do a few edits, and then it actually just recently got published. And the cool thing about all this is my mom pulled the ultimate mom move, and she actually reached out to the publication, was like, hey, I'm so-and-so's mom. Like, can I have a hard copy of this thing? They actually ended up like sending it to her and everything. But that was just nice to like, she's put in like the work and tried to raise me and, nurture me through like this entire process to where I'm like finally independent. And then that was kind of like her little cherry on top of like yes, like finally did this, he's arrived kind of thing. So that was good to see for her. So.
Dude, that's awesome. And it's actually another one of my questions, because I was going to ask you, like, what did you study in this paper? What was the paper all about?
So what I was kind of looking at was almost taking like a fresher look into some of like the tendon protocols, or the tendinopathy rehab protocols. So a lot of it was based on like eccentric training and heavy slow loads. And the main thought process behind trying to drive that kind of intervention was that, okay, well, we think that tendinopathy is either an overuse injury, or it's occurring within like the eccentric portion of a fast stretch shortening cycle movement.
Yeah.
But, then taking a look at more of like the first principles as far as like how tendons actually function within some of those movements, it's like, well, it's not really this eccentric motion of the musculature, and it has to occur relatively quickly in order to get the kind of behavior that you want out of the tendon itself. So what I actually did was look back into like, okay, well, Alfredson's like the big guy as far as like popularizing some of those heavy slow stuff. It's like, where did he get that from? Then where did that person get that from as far as the thought process? It's almost like fact check them.
Yeah, for sure.
And then what I started to see, it's like, okay, they were doing all this stuff based on the understanding that they had at the time, which is valid. It's like they at least had rationale behind it. But based on what we have an understanding of now, or what's becoming a little bit more popularized now, it's like, that's not really how it works. So let's at least look into like, okay, what happens if we try and do plyometric training or plyometric loading with some of these tendinopathy cases, and does it demonstrate the behavior that we think it should? And that's kind of what that paper was trying to put out. It's like, hey, like I get it as far as like the rationale for some of these exercises, and they're useful, but maybe not for the reasons that we think they are. Mm-hmm. But can we also try and sprinkle in some of this other stuff? Because based on the understanding of some of these primary sources is in like the actual research of how this stuff should behave, rather than some of the secondary sources of, okay, you read it in a textbook, you read it in a protocol, they're getting it from somewhere. They got it from their understanding of what these primary mechanistic sources are. Let's go back and see like, okay, did our understanding of that get updated? Yeah, it did. So, okay, should we update our approach as far as some of these tendinopathies? It's like, yeah, we probably should. So that's kind of what I was trying to put attention to with that.
That's awesome.
That paper. And so it seemed like it got some good coverage anyway. So
and
it was
did
good.
You guys talk about actual like ways to change the protocols?
So
I haven't got to read it yet.
So we put it into like the discussion. So that's where like the discussion section for the paper is important and everything. And that's where you can like put your own opinion and things like that. And believe me, I wanted to put in way more than we actually put in.
Right.
But I had my professor who was kind of just like trying to steer the vision as far as like, hey, no, like we need to stay specific. We need to stay a low reductionist here and like keep it to what we're trying to talk about, which is just Achilles tendons and et cetera, et cetera. So, but yeah, we talked a little bit about like, hey, it's almost like an insinuation you have to make as far as like, well, this is the stuff we're doing now, but this is what we see happen when the tendons are actually put into the environment that we're trying to return them to. This is what happens when we do this kind of training, and it matches more so of what we're trying to do with that environment. And so maybe that's a good idea, you know what I mean? So
kind of leading the horse to water, so to speak.
Exactly. And that's more so as far as like what my article is trying to create. I'm not a researcher of like 30 plus years. I'm probably never going to be. So I don't have that stance of like, okay, this is the Camporini et al. Protocol for tendinopathy rehab. That's probably never going to happen. I at least wanted to make it useful as far as pushing the bar forward as far as the understanding of what's going on, what the behavior is of some of these structures, and kind of changing the perspective as far as what we're trying to do with people. So
no, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Okay, number 3, how is the Justin Moore project coming along?
Slowly but surely.
Yeah.
No, he's doing great. And he's been great enough to be willing to be like this public guinea pig in a way, and just see like, okay, I have like this new understanding of some principles as far as like how the human body is supposed to move. And I know you've always struggled as far as like trying to recapture movement and having like pain-free ability to get in and out of cuts, jump, things like that. Let's at least see like when we try and apply these newer or this new perspective that I've gained, what kind of changes can we make for you? Are they for the better, both as far as like a health perspective and a performance perspective, which is really cool to see.
Yes.
You know, a lot of times we'll put like that dichotomy between like health doesn't equal performance, things like that. But, you know, sometimes you're able to have your cake and eat it too, as far as like, okay, you can move through his hips, he's feeling a little better, and his vert jump has gone up. Like, hey, that's kind of cool. It doesn't work for everyone like that. Like, I'm not trying to sell the ultimate dream for everyone, but in his case, it's like, yeah, we're able to make that happen for him. So that's been awesome to see.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're not following that, definitely cool to watch that progress. Like, I remember seeing him at the start and some of those initial videos you guys put out, and just like his spine position and the fluidity in his movements, like, he's looking good.
So now he's even more. So this has also been the cool stuff too, as far as what we're trying to do. It's like, okay, we can make Instagram posts as far as like the before and afters, and show like, okay, the nice glamorous changes that we're making and everything. But now what we're really trying to do is like, he posts on his story like all the videos, and then that's typically like how I'll coach him. It's like he sends me footage, and then I'm like, okay, this is good, this is not so good. But now, rather than just keeping it in our private text stream, it's like, let's at least put it out there so people can see like how painstaking sometimes the process can be, even though you put it on the Instagram as far as like, wow, we made this amazing before and after. And it's like, it was a stroke of genius and blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, it's like, it sucks, and it's painful for the athlete, and it's painful for you, and it's not always going to go as planned. And just highlighting that, at least as far as like setting that expectation, which a lot of times on the look at me side of things that social media really has. It's like, let's at least like show the reality. It's almost like an actual reality TV show, as opposed to like Keeping Up with Kardashians glamorous reality TV show. So,
well, it details the process, right? Like, that's what's cool about it, is it's not like, here's week 1, here's week 12, look at how awesome. It's like, no, like over the course of every week, you're seeing changes, and you're seeing your coaching cues. And then you see him improve it a little bit, and then you see your feedback, and then you start to see, oh, wow, like that squat really is cleaning up, or wow, he's getting so much more expansion now. Like, it's really cool to see that. So kudos to you guys for doing that.
What I want to do is even post more as far as like the faults, as far as, hey, this is what I was trying to do. It didn't really go like that.
Right.
I'm still trying to figure out why it didn't go like that, but this is at least what I was expecting to see, and this is what we got instead. So let's at least try and maneuver around to get more of that target that we're shooting. So
I love it. I love it. Okay, number 4. I know you're doing a fair amount of online training these days, and everybody wants to do online training now because it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. So in a lightning roundish fashion, give me the pros and cons of working online.
Pros would be, well, let me start with the cons first, is that it's way more painstaking and slower than you would do in person. So kind of alluding to the whole Justin Moore thing, it's like there's mistakes that happen all the time. You can at least be flexible within the moment when you're in person and change those like right then and there. Right now, they got to film their entire workout. They send it to me. I go through the entire thing. Then the next time they get to that workout, we're able to see, okay, did some of the changes we made to the previous day garner the changes that we actually wanted? So it's not as flexible. So there's a little bit more painstaking amount to it.
Yep.
The pro side to that is you get the client that is actually willing to put in that amount of work to create that. And it's readily apparent when I'll work with someone for the first 2 weeks and then they're just like, this isn't for me. And that's totally fine. But then you get that person where they really dedicate themselves to the process. And that's when you see some really cool changes just because of the amount of dedication that they're putting into the whole thing.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Okay, bonus lightning round question. Is that a Fleetwood Mac poster in your background?
It is, man. We actually stole this idea. I forget if my girlfriend saw it on like Pinterest or something like that. We had this like massive wall in our apartment. We're like, well, geez, are we going to go like full sorority girl and put like a tapestry on there or something like that?
Right.
Like, no, well, we'll actually use like some of the cool like wall art. We'll get like a what are they called? Record player. And actually put some of those up on the wall and everything so we can look all like edgy and cool for all our friends that come over.
Yeah.
So,
no, I like it. Immediate street cred. Is that her album or your album? Or is it a mutual?
That was a mutual purchase because now anytime we go to an album store, we'll like maybe get 2 or 3. It's like, hey, what do you think of that? Because now it's like the art has to go as well as the music has to go along with it.
No,
so
I like it.
We got some criteria here, man. So
yeah, I've just gotten to the point where like every Father's Day I buy myself a gift, just something that I want. So years ago it was the grill, but I think this year it's gonna be a record player because I dig it. I dig it.
It's great. Music sounds way different.
It does.
That's opposed to on your phone.
Dating myself, but that's what I grew up on. I had a record player first, so
there you go.
A little bit on the old side. All right, last but not least, number 6. What's next for the Mike Camporini?
Who the hell knows, man? And serious, it's like you can try and like I was saying before, it's like it's always good to at least try and project into like those 5 years and see what you're really gonna need to know and need to brush up on and everything. But what I've come to realize, it's like, all right, well, with each step in your career, you're not really exactly sure where you're jumping towards 100 feet from in front of you. You're more so jumping to like 10 feet or so. And you have an idea of where you're trying to go and you can make some more calculated 10-foot jumps in front of you. But it's like, okay, I made my next step into becoming a PT.
Yep.
Let's see who I meet. Let's see some of the skills that I develop. Let's see who takes interest in some of those skills. Do they have some opportunities for me as far as where I want to go? Does that opportunity pique my interest? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Right now, it's more like I want to go more into the private sector things and start to continue to build this online thing and see how much of a living can I make off of it first. Sure. Like I already demonstrated that I can make my rent payments. Okay, great. Can I continue to save? Can I potentially create a life for myself, for my future wife, for my future kids, things like that? And then are all those opportunities that are presenting themselves, will they one, keep me happy, keep my family happy, keep all those other connections happy, make sure I'm not a jerk within the industry, things like that. It's like there's all these different layers that I'm trying to account for. It's like if that opportunity demonstrates that, yes, it'll account for all those things, then let's try and go for it. So
I love it, man. Well, Mike, it's been awesome catching up with you. You know, I'm a big fan, and man, I was a little nervous when Bill was bringing you back because I just remember you as a undergrad or an undergrad intern, and just the amount of growth intellectually and just growing up, man. It's been really fun to watch you grow along, man.
I'm sure I caused many sleepless nights for all of you guys back then, but I'm glad that you can see how great I've really become.
Yes,
so.
you have come full circle, man. It's impressive. So
thank you.
Again, thanks for coming on the show, buddy. Where can the listeners find out more about you and the work that you're doing?
My main spot would be Instagram. I don't post all that much, but I do try and post somewhat regularly. And then, like I said, that's where really I'm doing a lot of stuff with Justin. So that's the main stuff I'm posting about. So that's campo.dpt on Instagram. And feel free to reach out, DM me, whatever. If you guys got questions, want to have a conversation, just want to keep in touch, like I'm all for that. So
I mean, just know he's not going to write you back because he's famous. I mean, the Campo deadlift, the Camporini angle, he's got exercises named after him, man. He's big time, but you can try campo.dpt, right?
Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome, man. You're welcome. Thanks again for coming on the show, buddy. This was great.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, my friends, that does it for this week's show with Mike Camporini. Really hope you enjoyed it. Like I mentioned in the episode, I'm just really impressed with this guy's evolution. You know, he started off as an intern at IFAST many years ago. Like a lot of kids, he was sharp. He put in the work. He got a lot better, but he was a kid at the time. So when he came back and he did his PT rotation with Bill, I just can't tell you how blown away I was with his growth and his evolution as a coach, intellectually and just maturity wise. I mean, just very impressed with where he is at and where he's going in the future. And while I'm not going to hold him up here in his late 20s as a subject matter expert, I can absolutely tell you his experience is very valuable. So if you know somebody else that's getting ready to go to PT school, they're considering going to PT school, or maybe somebody that's there now and they're maybe a little disillusioned with the entire process, let them listen to this show. Please pass this show along to them because I guarantee they're going to take something away from it as well. So my friend, that does it for this week's episode. As always, thank you so much for your support. Love and appreciate you. And we'll be back soon with our next episode. Take care.